Hey there, welcome to the Jeff and Heidi Show, where you're going to have the opportunity to listen to and learn from everyday entrepreneurs. Welcome to the Jeff and Heidi Show. We're here today. I've got my co-host Heidi Anderson from ECI SecurePay and myself, Jeff Heggie. And we have a special guest with us today, Peri Shawn. And I'll give you a brief introduction to her, and then I'll let her tell about her own story. So Peri is the award-winning author of the book, Sell More with Sales Coaching. You may have read some of her articles in SellingPower, Salesforce.com, Entrepreneur, Sales and Marketing Management Magazine, Inc., and National Post and Forbes. Peri teaches and coaches sales VPs and other teams how to coach, increase sales, and improve their client experience. She leverages the neuroscience of leadership and buying to help businesses grow. Her company, the Coaching and Sales Institute, has worked with such teams as KPMG, GE, Hallmark, AT&T, Direct Energy, Bell, and RBC, which is the Royal Bank of Canada, and Rogers, a couple of Canadian companies. She is a Canadian, yes. And so, hey, we're glad to have you with us and excited to hear your story. So please add to that and tell us a little more about yourself.
Thank you. And the fact that I'm Canadian, don't hold that against me.
So we love Canadians.
I know, it's great. I love it to be amongst fellow Canadians. Anyway, short version for me, I have an unusual journey because I started out as a high school teacher, and I was very interested in what caused students to perform better. Started to test and try different things and fell on something that actually works. And then I started getting grants from the government. I ended up teaching other teachers and then teaching professors on how to teach using this, what I discovered. And then at one of these large educational conferences, someone from the corporate world came up to me and said, "You have to take this to corporate." And I went, no. I'm a career educator. And needless to say, he was quite persistent. And so over that following summer, I worked with them one day a week for 6 weeks. And at the end of that 6 weeks, surprise me, surprise them, they doubled their sales. Oh, wow. And so there began a journey to start working in the corporate world and helping organizations, leaders improve the results of their team. Got me into really digging into, how do people actually make their decision to buy, and looking at that from from the neuroscience, what happens in somebody's brain, working with 4 neuroscience grad students. We comb through the research, find out, what it says with regards to a conversation, not just in writing, but actually in a conversation, whether that be in person, on the phone, or, through a teleconferencing medium of some kind. And then we would take that information of what we discovered and then test it with large sales teams. The largest sales team I've ever worked with is 700 sales people.
Wow.
And I've worked in contact centers as well. And so the amount of information that they track when you have a large sales team is incredible. So we learned, change this one thing and let's see what it does to the results. And so as a result, been able to develop this body of knowledge that actually makes a difference, doesn't feel like it doesn't use the old techniques that, I'm a believer we all have this trust antenna, and that when we're having a conversation with someone, if it's, how would you say, if they're using a technique that feels manipulative, that trust antenna comes out really strongly, and they sort of, you can see their body language, they sort of lean back, or they close the door or hang out the phone. But in that arena, it's been a really neat journey for me, and not where I ever thought I would be, but it's been a journey of sort of following, my sense of curiosity. I'm a little bit of a geek, and I've loved it, in terms of finding out what works and what helps people do better.
So I'm a little curious about going back to the education part. Obviously, sounds like you developed some things that would really help kids do better.
Yes.
Were you
yes.
able to like create a program or something that other people were able to adopt to keep carrying on after you went into corporate?
Yes, I actually wrote a book called Educational Performance Coaching, and it's something that's used in a few universities right now. I understand. I don't know if they're still using it to this day, but that's what I've been told. And it's because I was teaching other teachers, and so I was passing it on to them. And what I discovered was that when the teacher flips the classroom around so that one, it is values based for the student, so that it's based on what it is that is highest priority for them, and then you make the content meet them there, and then you design. It's really taking what we do and almost reversing it in some ways, and then you really focus in on asking the questions so that they make. Today we now know that it's all about making those neurological connections for them, because if we just talk, typically that doesn't necessarily engage their brains.
Right.
And that's the reason why the classroom dynamic has been a challenge for many. It works for some, a few, but for me, I was looking for what would work for all students, no matter what their background. Also, part of it included movement, that when you move, you actually cause the brain to work more efficiently and effectively. And yeah, so there were a lot
Probably really helps with kids who are a little bit ADD too, to have movement and to help them kind of focus their minds.
Yeah, it helps with all. Actually, one of the things that I notice is most people in the corporate world are fidgeting, and part of the reason why I teach them how to do intentional fidgeting, so that it helps with engaging their brain more effectively. Because to me, this idea of us sitting still all day is not conducive to learning or productivity or performance. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I've got to ask you more on that one, because I'm constantly sitting here flipping my pens and whatever. How do I purposely fidget?
Okay. You purposely, so I'll give you a little bit of background on it. We have, well, everyone's familiar with the left and right hemisphere of the brain, right? And we perform better and do better when we're using our whole brain rather than being, quote unquote, stuck on one side versus the other. Okay. And it's called holistic learning. And so when you move, there's a part of the brain called the corpus callosum, and it's a connective tissue between the two brains. Two halves of the brain. And so when you are engaged in movement, you actually cause the two halves of the brain to communicate more effectively. Okay. And therefore you do better. And I remember a class I had when I first discovered this from a professor who had learning challenges themselves. I had a class that was 23 students, 16 of them had learning challenges. And I'll make the story really, really short, that we actually ended up getting bicycles, pedals under the desk for them to actually use. And we ended up with a class average of 80%.
Wow.
That year. Yeah.
And they were probably more fit by the end of the year too.
Oh yeah, more fit as well. And they actually borrowed the pedals and took them to their other classes in order to do that much better. Yeah, we had some really great examples in that group of students who really, how can you say, they surprised themselves that they could actually do that well, because some of the students, it was a business English class and grade 12, and they all had to get this final English credit to be able to graduate. And some of them, they had been in that class before with other teachers, and let's put it this way, some of them, it was their fourth time in that class. And so for them to be able to do well was not only, great, you got a great grade, but what it did for them personally.
For their self-esteem, I'm sure
their self-esteem was huge, huge. And some of them were actually, they had dreams about, this is what I'd love to be in life, but their teachers had talked them out of it because they didn't do that well. Right. And so I got to tell you, there were a lot of tears in that classroom when they realized that they could actually do well. And it wasn't just the students, it was also the teacher, because it was just such a great class to see them go beyond what they thought was possible. And that to me is so great.
Yeah.
So I've heard there's actually benefit on doodling. Is that the same concept?
It's the same concept. The easy way to think about it is when I originally learned about this from the professor, it's either a movement forward and back or a movement side to side. And each one of us has one or the other is better for us. Okay. And I found most of my students, it was forward back. And so it can be as simple as under your desk, like I do this with executives quite often, under your desk, just just cross your leg and move your foot up and down or side to side, depending on which one works better for you. And then they're able to focus better in the meetings because they're in meeting after meeting after meeting. And it's all too easy for the mind to start wandering. And so that helps a lot in that regard.
Now it's interesting. Now they also have almost like a stand-up treadmill desk.
Yes.
And I'm like, I think that would be really. It would definitely keep you alert. Like I said, you'd be very fit by the end of it.
Yes.
You have to work yourself up, I'm sure, to being able to do it for very long. But
yes, exactly. Yeah.
So staying on the topic of the neuroscience, how do you tie that into sales?
How do you tie that into sales? Well, first off, many salespeople are fidgeters. So it's, and you'll hear, I purposely don't have any pens nearby that I can click, just so I don't drive anybody crazy if I'm doing it sound wise. But in terms of their performance, and it depends on the world that they are in and what they sell, including movement for them is an important aspect. But in terms of the neuroscience of sales, it's about shifting the way in which you work with somebody who's in, because I think about it as the neuroscience of buying. Okay. And so what's actually going on inside the brain of the person who's buying? And there are studies that show, which I think is fascinating, that people actually have the areas responsible for making that decision for buying actually activated before they are consciously aware of it. Really? And so that indicates that people actually make the decision unconsciously first before they're actually aware of it. So as a salesperson, one of the responsibilities is to find out where they are in that buying decision already, okay? And then help them with the remainder of that journey. Instead of, we have a policy in our household that we will not buy from a salesperson who doesn't have great sales skills, because we don't want to reinforce the wrong behavior for the next person that comes along. And so to me, what works most effectively is to know that they've already come a certain distance, don't plan to say the same thing to every single person, because you don't know that that's going to be important to them or not. But instead, to ask the questions to find out where they are in that journey. I will often, when I make presentations, I will often ask the group to choose anything that they've purchased in the last couple of years with the help of a salesperson. So they're all choosing randomly, just anything. And then I ask them to raise their hand or to make a comment in the chat as to what it is that where they are in their buying decision. 25% meaning they're less likely to buy, 50% meaning they're window shopping, they could buy or not buy, and then 75% they know they're going to buy, they're on a mission, they just don't know which product, and then the 100%ers, which are those individuals who know they're going to buy, they know exactly which product, which would be like my husband when he buys technology. He just
Mine too.
Yeah, exactly. That's a classic. I love watching him, because what he does is he goes into the store, has a brief conversation with the salesperson. Salesperson goes in behind, comes back out with the box. My husband gives him a credit card, and within 5 minutes, my husband's out of the store. Okay. And so when I ask people, with randomly choosing any item, what percentage of your buying decision is complete before you actually speak to that salesperson, and before you actually spoke to that salesperson? And the majority of the group, 80% or more, and this is thousands of people, will say 75% of their buying decision is complete. So that changes the nature of our sales conversations, so that we only really have 25% to take them per se, but also to line up our sales activities so that they come to the conversation with at least 75% or as close to 100% as you possibly can.
By delivering them content and stuff ahead of time with like email marketing and things like that, so that they're
whatever sales activities that you're engaged in will help. Different sales activities help people be in different places. Also, the sales conversations that you are having will give you information that you can then use and sort of use it to move them further along in the content marketing you choose. So they really dovetail into one another, rather than, in many organizations, they're treated as silos.
It's very interesting. So who is your ideal client? Do you like the bigger corporations, or do you like the small mom and pops better, or what do you prefer?
I have a diversity of a group. For me, I'm looking for those, and this may sound a little unusual, but I work with businesses. It's almost like I have two hats in my business. I work with businesses to help them grow their business. And usually their sales teams are a minimum of 7-10 people minimum. With that side of the business. And then I also have where I serve entrepreneurs and help them grow their businesses utilizing these concepts, because the thing that I'm in a unique position. I'm very conscious of it, because most people don't have the time to comb through what the neuroscience says, and they've never done this testing in a large sales arena. And so I feel a responsibility and to share it with entrepreneurs so that they can grow that. Just because I believe we all have a dream of some kind as an entrepreneur of what you would love to create, and to be able to help them create that, bring that to the world.
Yeah, I'm sure, because, and we've talked about this before, it's like most entrepreneurs, especially when you're first starting out, you're wearing, 10 different hats,
right?
One of which is sales, one marketing, accounting, and everything else. And to have somebody to help you be more effective and efficient, and especially if that's not your strong suit. Like for me, that is not my strong suit, sales. Yeah. And to have somebody, coach and yes. learn how to do that better.
Yeah. Yes, and I do that in a group dynamic, so that they're learning specifically for themselves, but also for they learn from others as well, which is really neat. So
I love that. It's really interesting. And so how long ago was it that you moved from teaching into this field?
Over 20 years ago. So
just a little while ago.
It's just a little while ago, yeah. And then I was 15 years in teaching before that. So it's been quite the journey. And I don't, if you had asked me as a child, is this what you would be doing? I go, no, no. But here I am. Yeah.
That's very cool. And so what has been probably, obviously when you first discovered some of these things, it was probably an epiphany, like an aha.
Yeah.
But what has been the biggest development from that point to now? Because I'm sure it's just.
Yeah, it's a continual growth of learning and testing, and it's just the way my brain works. I think that there's so many spots along the way. I remember, actually, this one was a big one for me. It was when I walked in. I walked into largest corporation that I've ever experienced. Okay, and I've been asked to coach the senior exec. And so here I arrive in the building, and as I'm about to press the button, I become very self-aware. All of a sudden, I can feel my heart racing. I can feel, my hands getting a little sweaty, and I'm thinking, oh great, as I'm about to go to the executive floor, which is where you get escorted to whatever room you're going to as a guest. And I'm like, oh great, this is not the way I want to be, to go shake hands. And so I thought I need to do some really deep reflection and what's going on for me. And so I'm grateful that the floor was the top floor in that building, which gave me a bit of time. Okay. Not a lot, but a bit of time. And also I had some time waiting at the reception until the person who I was seeing came out. And part of it inside was, I'm a teacher. That was my self-identification at that time. And it's like, what am I doing? Who am I to do this? And I remember my father was a really soulful man. And he used to tell me, remember, because he used to teach us all the time as kids, the importance of questions and how questions are something that will drive us to understand something deeper. And he said, sometimes, you just need to look at the question you're asking. And so as I'm asking, who am I to do this? I'm recognizing this is probably not coming from a good place inside at this moment. This is not what I needed in the moment. But as I'm asking, reflecting on it, I'm going, okay, look at the question I'm asking. What's the question I'm asking myself? And I just thought, I need to change the way I'm asking the question. Instead of who am I to be here, it's who am I to be here? Meaning that, why is it me at this point? Why me at this moment? And how is it that this is a perfect moment for me to be doing this? Because I'm a believer also that there's a reason and a purpose for everything. And as I started to ask myself that question, it became so important. I didn't realize it in that moment, but as I'm driving away and as I reflected on it more and more, for me, the realization was the reason why I was there in that moment is because of the skills I had developed that were not the skills that this individual I was seeing had the time or the interest in their life in developing. And so for me, that was a pivotal moment to realize that what was most important to me, which was people development, was not important to this individual. And for them to take the time, they just wanted the Coles Notes version, the short version of what do I need to do better and how can I make this happen, and et cetera, et cetera. And so I realized, in that moment, I sort of had to get myself together to be able to do what I was doing, but it became a reflection for me on an ongoing basis to realize that what I valued most would be the weakness or a lack of interest for my client, but what held them back from doing what they wanted to do. And then that became a great component for me to look at who it is that I serve, that they have something that they want to accomplish, that I'm sort of what's most important to me is that access point for them to get what they want. And then to look at my business from that perspective, which allowed me to be able to go, oh yeah, that industry would really have that as a void, what I'm really good at. So that would be a great industry to be working in. And it's really helped me in that journey. And it's also been able to help many of the entrepreneurs that I work with. Yeah.
So did this particular executive then from this scene, when you were done with the coaching session, do you feel like they came out of it, or do you feel like they just kind of like you said, they just wanted to...
they knew, actually the way it was for them is that they had reached a certain level in their career and they wanted to get to the next level. And what was holding them back was the people skills to be able to do that, and really people development. And so my role, that was the start of a great long relationship until the day that they retired, actually, that we worked together to help them actually really work well at the people development side. And actually, they did move up even further. And on top of that, they actually won a couple of awards for their leadership in the organization. So it was really great to see the transformation. Awesome. Yeah, because the thing is, most of us don't we don't, part of it is, my job is, my brothers tease me and they say, you get to insult executives and you get paid for it. and the reality is, I get to hold up a mirror ever so gently, and help them see what the possibilities are, for them and for their team. So.
I like that. It's a great story.
For sure. It's actually, I really found that story intriguing from your viewpoint of it, because literally 15 minutes before we started this call, I finished recording a module for one of my courses on the power of our habitual questions we ask ourselves. Yes. And how that impacts us. And so, yeah, that's exactly what I've been talking about for 2 hours this morning.
So, great. It's nice to know we're in alignment.
Yeah. Absolutely. No, very cool. Yeah. Well, this is excellent. I want to make sure that anyone that is listening to this knows how to contact you, get and follow you, whatever it is. So tell us a little bit more about that and where people can find you and follow you.
Oh, great. Well, thank you. Two places I would say, depending on who they are. One would be LinkedIn, to reach out to me there. I'm very responsive in that world. And then the other is possibly the Facebook group that I have, which is called Selling with Science and Soul, and where we're looking at how do we help you increase your sales by using the science, but also looking at the mindset of what's going on for individuals.
Okay, excellent. I put that down, so I'll make sure to add those to the show notes as well, so that people
they'll have to check that out.
Oh, thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. It has been a pleasure talking with a fellow Canadian and learning more about what you do. It's very intriguing. It's an exciting thing you're doing, and thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you. I'm grateful to be here.
Thank you, Peri.
All right.